natural inclination is for parents to, or people to reject things from their childhood and provide the opposite and better for their own children, right? So in the case of, well, I don't believe in that, all that discipline. I'm going to be different with my kid. Like, there was a huge swath of that. It was so common for people raised in the 50s, you know, maybe late 40s, 50s, that one of the parents was a strict disciplinarian and, you know, was very dogmatic, you know, religious or otherwise, you know, and maybe the only punishment that a parent understood to pull out was, you know, the beating or the physical punishment. They only understood negative punishment. I'm sorry, positive punishment. That is, in order to get their child's behavior to decrease, they introduced physical pain. Like, it's all they knew. That works. You know, that's as old as fucking dirt. It's old as dirt.
It's pretty effective, so...
It isn't. It has an unintended consequence of causing the child to grow up and not want to inflict that on their child, right? So I use the paper plate analogy. When paper plates first came out as a household thing, you know, obviously there was a profit incentive for the makers of them, you know, the Kimberly-Clarks and Dixies of the world. So even though there was debatable information about the garbage that was being created, you know, oh, you're filling the landfills, it's bad for the planet. Everyone was like, yeah, fuck you, hippie. It's convenient, so I don't mind. And the reason that it was, you know, easy for the people who were making the adult decision, the purchasing decisions at that time, to just reject anything disparaging is because they remember having to wash dishes when they were kids and they hated it. And they're thinking, you know, as a bonus, I'm saving my kids from having to do things I didn't like as a kid, and they're going to like me more because now they don't have to wash dishes. So there's a big difference between something being a convenience and an entitlement. Those kids now know nothing about washing dishes. Everything's disposable, and we now have a disposable generation. And the proof for that is how in the 80s, the top car you could get is a Cadillac, right? And there was a new Japanese import. You can call it a crisis. But people bought durable goods and believed in quality. Disposable wasn't really a thing yet. There were very few disposable things. Everyone was still from that post-Depression era mindset of, if I'm going to spend money on something, it needs to be quality and it needs to last. That's gone now. It didn't take long. All it took was for a generation to die out and the kids raised with paper plates to say, well, of course everything's disposable. It was always disposable since I was a kid, right?
Absolutely. So they lose the teachings of, you know, the older generations as an unintended consequence of these parents that are trying to make their child's lives easier, but what they don't realize is they're taking away valuable lessons from the kids.
It was an indulgence. It was an inherited indulgence. It was just a positive consequence that, you know, like I'm saying, well, as an added benefit, my kids don't have to go through something I viewed as negative as a kid. It wasn't the, you know, reason for it. It was because it was their convenience. But when you grow up with things without perspective, you take it as a given. You know, you don't have the benefit of any other kind of experience, like who washes dishes. So kids in different circumstances that do wash dishes and do have jobs since they're young and do have responsibilities, I would say typically don't have these kinds of problems. But, you know, by and large, we have a disposable generation. And by and large, we have a generation of the hippie parents because it was so common for the one-trick pony punishment parent, you know, the punishment paradigm of these parents in that generation was, you know, beat the kid for acting out. You know, children should be seen and not heard. Spoil the rod, you know, spare the rod, spoil the child. The baby got thrown out with the bathwater in that, and we ended up with the blue ribbon parent generation 2 generations later, right? And look how that fucking turned out. Now everyone wants to chop their tits off, turn their dicks inside out, and, you know, the freak show we have going on now. That's the unintended consequence of that. Kids need structure, and they need to learn the consequences of their actions. And just having the opposite effect, you know, trying to do the opposite of your parents because you disagreed with their style, there's no foundation. So my whole thing is you should have, if you need a license to drive a car, you should need a license to have a kid. If you're going to be able to raise a child to become a well-adjusted person, they need a shot. And if you're going to go about things like, well, I'm going to reason with the child, they're not going to learn anything, man. They're not going to be well-adjusted adults, and if they do, it's by fucking chance.
As far
That's
as the
my
license
right.
goes, I don't know about a license because I feel like the government's very poor at enforcing things in general, especially licenses. Licenses tend to turn more into a weapon against civilians versus something of actual benefit.
A certification and something. I mean, I'm not saying it has to be government. It could be anything. Just like OSHA. I don't fucking know. Something.
Oh, shit.
Something. Like, it's just look at the consequence of people raising kids haphazardly with no. It used to be familial. It used to be the old school. This is just how our family does it. And it was all very similar because it used to be based in religion for the most part, and most religions have similar grounding. Name, insert religion here. Whether it's Judeo-Christian, Muslim, or well, shit. You don't even need religion if it's like, let's say, Asia. It's a communist Asian country that has no religion because it's not allowed. They still have some form of formal understanding of what children need to grow to become well-adjusted adults. They need some structure. They need some discipline. They need to understand the consequences of their actions. They need to learn how to control their own emotions.
Absolutely. I think, honestly, our biggest issue in the Western society, or all Western societies, is we're too lenient on people in general, especially children. We're very lenient on kids, and I feel like that's really hindered a lot of these children's mental development, and that's why we see these adults that act like children, to be quite frank, and they have no reference of reality. And instead of trying to face reality, they're trying to live in their own delusional matrix, and most of them do.
It's the extension of the tantrum. The tantrum worked with the most authoritative figures in their formative years, right? The parents, they were the end-all be-all of their being. It's where they slept, it's where they woke up, it's who gave them their food, it's who gave them life and nurtured their life, and they let them cry to get everything they wanted. So they just extend that out to everybody else that's in there. As you become an adult and leave the house, it's basically the world. How we learn to live at home becomes how we learn to live in the world. So if you're the child whose parent is like, no, you shouldn't cry because that, with reasoning the kid out of, like, no, you don't get this. If you don't stop crying, we're not talking. And you let them cry it out. And then the child learns that, oh, crying doesn't work. But if all you teach the kid is crying works, then all they do is learn to cry more and harder until they get what they want. And that turns into yell louder, act worse, do more outrageous things to receive the desired attention or the desired outcome. And that's what we see here. People yelling in your face. No, you need to think what I think. What you do is unacceptable. And like making shit up. Look at all the childish argumentation going on, like with the crazy non-logical stances that people have to justify their degeneracy. Fucking nuts. It's nuts. Yeah. It's so nuts that there's memes about it. It's just memes. And
Absolutely.
There are memes of the memes where you can, make a meme about a logic twist, a logical paradox that you can use back against it's crazy. And it all stems, I believe, from this non-grounded, non-foundational approach to parenting. Kids are pretty much by and large the same. They're born, they cry, they eat, they sleep, they shit and piss, they need their diapers changed, they need their bodies cleaned, they need to be fed, they need to be kept warm, they need to be cared for when they're sick, and then they start self-discovering, and they need some kind of guidance and structure to navigate through the different emotions that they're going to go through as they discover pain and pleasure and preference. I want that toy. Wah! What did you teach the kid? That wah, 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 wah gets the toy. What if wah, wah, no, you can't, I'm not even going to talk to you about it until you calm yourself down. Wah, 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 no toy. Calm down. All right, let's talk about it. And that is
Absolutely
that easy. It's really that easy. So it's the people that kind of take the same approach, and we're seeing it's in such large numbers, man. This is why I think there's so many fat kids, right? Because people are like, well, when baby smile, me good parent. Very simple. Baby smile when me smash burger in baby mouth. baby fat. Oh well, it's not even a consideration. All that's important is I'm a good parent because my child's smiling. Well, no, you can't just indulge baby smiling. You got to teach the kid that there's consequences to over. You can't just give the kid sugar because it makes them happy. You can't just give people everything that makes them happy. That's how you get addicts. That's how you get unhealth. And that's where we're at,
With modern society, I think it's interesting. Instead of facing the issues that are currently plaguing us, everyone just wants to essentially say anybody that points out the obvious is a bigot. Like, oh, you're fat phobic.
It's exactly the logical fallacies I was talking about earlier, where you can just meme about it because it's just such stupid argumentation. It's childish argumentation.
Oh, absolutely, and they've taken away our ability to judge things. I feel like judgment's a very important part of the human experience, and it's a part of growing up to be able to judge something. If it's worthy to be inside your life or not. And it's just interesting to see a lot of these people make up excuses for their lifestyle choices, such as I'm fat because of stress, instead of looking at the root of the problem, which is the food and the lifestyle that they've chosen.
What I try to explain to anyone who's willing to listen is you got to draw from 4 different behavioral options, right? When you're trying to shape behavior, there's positive and negative, where you either introduce something or take away something, and there's rewards and punishment. Everyone gets to flog the term positive reinforcement.
Hey, Future Delore here. I was in the middle of animating this segment when I realized one of our drunken buddies joined the chat and derailed the conversation completely. This podcast was recorded on New Year's Eve, so my solution to make it less awkward was to do this.
Few minutes later.
Well, whatever the powers be that have been attempting to destroy the nuclear family, I would say have succeeded. Considering the rate of nuclear families is only 22% in America, it's unfortunate, because for a long time, I absolutely thought that we could fight back, and unfortunately...
Still kind of can. Yeah, you can.
Yeah.
This generation's lost, but there's still always... That's the good news, is there's always another crop of kids.
That's true, there is always another generation.
So, what happens, I've got 2 brothers that one just is out of school. He's not doing anything. My other one is still in school. I got a daughter, right? And it's a balancing act, right? I want the boys to succeed as males, and it's not the same advice that I would give to the girl. Like, it has to be different. It has to be different because they both have to approach life different. This whole meme of girls are boys and boys are girls and girls should approach life like men, it doesn't work. For example, you can't have a room full of hot women trying to lock down a guy and have him, if he's sane, commit to any one of them. It's a great deal for him, because as soon as he commits to one of them, he's saying, well, if you change your mind and you want to take half my shit down the road, that's fine. That's retarded. There's no downside for the woman to lock him down in the marriage. And the difference is those women will gladly share that guy, and since he's easy to please, he sees no problem with it. He's very satisfied with that arrangement. 10, 20 hot girls trying to fuck him constantly, and he can just spin them and be like, oh yeah, I'll think about marrying you. Yeah, here's your rose, here's your pat on the head. Oh, and they're like, tee-hee, oh, well, blah, blah, my life's so hard. And then you switch it up and gender swap it to the other version of the show, the production, the mind-numbingly brainwashed fucking crackhead production that it is, and you have 20 guys trying to get the one girl. They have to be simps to accept that arrangement. That high value guy, if he's in his right mind, is not going to accept that. If you get 20 dudes, and I've seen TikToks, like, I don't know, it was like some TikTok chick or some Twitch chick, and she invited all these dudes to sit down and like date her, and they must have been paid or something, because they were sitting in this white room and she was like going through her list of criteria, and they one by one left, and she had no one left after that. But in reality, if you show up to a date and you're going to date a girl and she's got like 5 guys already dating her, would you really sit there and go through a date?
No.
Me neither.
At that point.
I'd be like, no, it's me or nobody. Like, I'm not gonna fucking be one of many dating you. Fuck off. And here's the other side: is that would not be satisfying for the girl either. So my assertion and assumption, and the hypothesis is this: in order for guys to be willing to share a high value woman, they are simps, and an army of simps is not going to satisfy a woman. And my proof of that is why you have so many social media selfies, right, of girls going, "Where are all the good men?" And then guys are like, check your friend zone, check your friend zone. So where are all the good men? Meanwhile, they have literally thousands of dudes flogging themselves at these girls, but they're not acceptable to her. And here's the other difference.
I was going to say women, from what I've noticed, women prefer to be the follower in the relationship. They don't want to have to be the leader. And because so many men have been turned into simps, try and follow the women and, appease them like, oh, she doesn't like my haircut, I'm going to change it for her. Or, oh, she doesn't like my beard, I'm going to shave it off. Or, oh, she doesn't like the way I do this or the way I do that, and I'm going to change it. And the more they give in to her, the less she's interested, because she's conquered him. She doesn't see him as a challenge anymore, and that's one thing I have noticed in my own personal relationships and in quite a few relationships with guys my age. It's interesting to see that the information that's given to young men especially is to be a simp. We're trained and taught to be a simp from a very early age, and that's really what's fucked us over, especially since single mothers tend to dominate the landscape currently. That's just caused an entire generation of weak men, to be quite frank, because there's no male role models to look at. And I would say the secrets of old, that I would say, you're supposed to learn from like your grandpa or your dad or whatever, talking about women, telling men how to interact with them, is completely gone. And that's why, I should say, social media has only exacerbated the issue to like the 11th degree, where it really shouldn't have gone that far, in my opinion. And I would say social media has been far worse for society than it has been good.
Maybe even by design. So there's an old Italian saying. I got kind of. There was one point I wanted to make. Just remind me about the Italian saying, which is the second you disrespect your wife, your marriage is over. But real quick, the other reason why the Bachelor scenario doesn't work is that the girls, all those hot girls on that show, are only going to accept that hot guy for sex. They're not going to dip down to the 5s and 6s. Whereas
Absolutely.
the hot guy, the alpha Chad, even if he's got an army of fucking women, after him that are all hot, he'll bang the dog here and there. He ain't gonna call him back, but they have a shot. So the women watching the show, even if they're fat and ugly, can relate to the screen full of hot chicks in a room fucking, going after the one hot dude, right? Because they can relate. They're like, yeah, I could fuck that guy if I wanted to. Yeah, I could put on my clown outfit and fucking fool him if I had to, or if I'm lucky. But the opposite is not true for that room full of men, because guys are watching that show who are 4s and 5s and 6s. That's why we have black pill. There is no black pill for women. The black pill is male, because the women are not going to fuck the 5s and 6s. They're not. So that's another slant, right? So again, just to disprove this whole notion of raise your women like men and everyone should be more like each other, and that whole approach to life. It's fucking wrong. You can't raise girls and boys the same. You just shouldn't. And if you are, you fucking shouldn't. Anyway, I've had a lot of time to think about that. Old Italian advice. The moment you disrespect your wife, your marriage is over. And I used to think about it, well, I guess because she'll always be seeking revenge, or it just becomes vendetta, and you never quite recover from that. She's always holding a grudge, and they have a really long memory about bullshit and drama that, you'll forget about it. And if they don't make issue of it, you figure it's over, but then a year later they bring up this fucking thing that you don't even remember. Like, we've all been through that with girls, which is true. I don't think that's what it means anymore. I think what it means now, from more of an RP perspective, is if they can get you to react, they win, and then they lose respect for you. So if you get so tilted that you disrespect your wife, she can't respect you as a man because she controlled your emotions. She knows the bullshit that she's raising is no big deal. But if you're not grounded enough to not react to her dumb bullshit and just kind of like brush it off like with a smirk and James Bondy in a way, that's where the attraction is. There's a reason why they don't write James Bond to fucking, get emotional over the little digs by the women in the film, because it's not attractive to women. It's not a role model thing to do.
That's a very good point. That's why also a lot of women tend to like heroes that are very similar to Clint Eastwood, or anti-heroes. Those kind of men are stoic, something that has been deemed toxic, but at the same time, that's what women crave, is the stoic man, the man that will always be steady even in the storms of life. And that's something that's completely gone away with these current generations, because these men are taught to be weak. They're not taught the art of indifference. No matter what happens, keep your cool, keep it calm, because you can always solve a problem. If you think through it logically, you'll be fine. A lot of these men tend to react with emotions instead of logic, and because of that, we've essentially have an entire generation of walking weapons that are going to go off on their little emotional bombs. And I think that's why gang violence and violence in general and crimes are so high, is because of these men that just don't know how to control themselves. They don't know how to do anything anymore. And so they're low value, useless men, but that's by design.
They're emotional. Emotions
Absolutely.
rule. And I'm sure that's a factor. But even if it doesn't go as far as violence, how do you get people to mate when there's no genuine interest in partnering up for all these reasons?
That's the death of a society. You don't.
It's like everybody's being taught to be unattractive to the opposite sex, and they either accept or reject it, and hence the role of parenting. So again, a license to parent, or a certification to parent, or something like it. It can even be voluntary, but when people see results, they want to know, what's your secret? My kid, maybe your kid's great and mine's just a piece of shit. It's like, how about taking ownership of your technique? What did you do? Maybe you're not a good parent. Maybe you don't know what the fuck you're doing. You need some school.
I definitely do think that a better approach than a license would be, some actual parenting courses, but not from these fucking radical communist and socialist bastards, but from some psychologists, that can help out with these parents to understand how kids really form in their early stages, because I feel like that's something that's genuinely lost to most parents.
There's a resistance to it, and psychology is kind of a double-edged sword. It can be weaponized for the communist agenda too. It kind of teaches people that there's something wrong with you and it's just the way it is. But yeah, aspects of it can be taught to be beneficial. So this is what I like to teach anyone who's willing to listen, right? The four shapers of behavior. I know I'm repeating myself a little bit, but you either add something or take it away to either reinforce a behavior, or make it more likely to reoccur, or to extinguish it, make it less likely to occur. That's it. It's really that simple. And it gives you a reason to think. If you just keep alert for teachable moments, kids will give you teachable moments constantly. It's like I see all these TikToks of women crying, "Oh, being a single mom is so hard." Like, not really. Here's the four things you can do with every single teachable moment that presents to you. Not that it's going to be awesome every day. Like, sometimes, can get run down and overwhelmed, and it's not going the way you anticipated. That happens. But for the most part, it'll be good. It's on you to shape the kid's behavior. They don't raise themselves. So, the example of smacking a kid because they did something you disapprove of is technically, in Pavlovian terms, positive punishment. Everyone likes to flog positive reinforcement. Positive punishment. You did something I don't like, so I'm going to introduce a pain, an outside stimulus from my hand or belt or shoe or whatever, which is pain, to teach you to stop doing that. There's other ways to do it. You have negative punishment. You acted out and I don't like it, so I'm going to take away your toy because of that behavior. And with good behavior, you can earn it back. No hitting. So there's really nothing to rebel against. You don't have the same shift of becoming a hippie because my dad was just a yelling drunk maniac who liked to hit. And I'm not saying that. My dad was not like that. He was fucking sane. He only hit me once and I really deserved it. But in general, that whole hippie, reason with my child was a reaction to people who only knew one trick: to hit the kid when they acted in the way that annoyed them. That was it. That's all they know. I'm going to yell and scream and hit. And that'll teach them. Yeah, it'll teach them all right. It'll teach them to raise your grandchildren to be not well-adjusted people. Great job.
I would say that modern parenting, okay, this is going to sound weird, but hear me out. It's like communism. Where communism is an overreaction to Christianity, modern day parenting is an overreaction to the punishment that these parents endured as a child. And because of that, they've completely thrown out Pavlovian theory. And, well, I think honestly, the whole, spare the rod, spoil the child sentiment is pretty fucking accurate. You don't necessarily have to hit the kid, but if you're constantly giving in, like you were saying, I mean,
that doesn't lead to anything good. So, spare the rod, spoil the child is a notion. What I'm saying is, take advantage of all the teachable moments, which are many in a week. Many. Kids are always testing their boundaries, and you can react to it by either giving something or taking it away to encourage a good behavior or reduce a bad behavior. It's that easy, right? So positive reinforcement, everybody understands the words positive reinforcement. They think it's all encompassing. It's only one of four aspects, right? Positive, adding something. Reinforcement, encouraging a behavior. You did really well, here's a trophy. You did really well, here's a cookie. You did really well, here's X. Or, you did really well, we can remove something that you find displeasurable. Wow, you did so well on your test, you don't have to mow the lawn this weekend. I'll hire someone to do it. Negative reinforcement. Well, I don't understand. The word negative means bad, right? No, it just means removal. So, I mean, there's a free one for anyone that wants to raise a kid properly. Employ these techniques. Be a parent ninja. It works. It takes time, and it takes discipline. Another thing I see, particularly mothers do horribly wrong constantly, is they get very egotistical when it comes to disciplining children. So they overreact, and it's like, you can never ever do this forever because of the way you made me feel. I don't like what you did just now so much that you'll never ever play with your friends ever again. Like, okay, that's enforceable. Really? So why say it? But they feel very comfortable saying it because their goal is to make an impact. Take me seriously. Well, you know, you're the parent. You're going to be taken seriously. It's implied. You're already in control of them. But the mother is likely to be the one to make their kid fat because they'll say some bullshit like, well, I don't know. It's just what he buys. Does he? He's 4. Your kid's fat because of you. You make the purchasing decisions. You don't want to say no because you don't want to be a bad mom. You don't understand the 4 ways of shaping behavior.
No, I absolutely agree. I definitely do think that modern day parents want to pass the buck onto somebody else instead of taking responsibility for their own actions and their own parenting techniques. And so they'll say like, oh, my child's bad, or he's usually not like this. That's an interesting excuse. You know, my kid's usually not like this, especially when their kid's acting out. Like, for example, like around family members or at the store or whatever. So a lot of these parents are more concerned about how the kids make them seem, or you know, the perception of the kids and the parents versus the well-being of the actual kids.
I think that tends, if I had to guess, I would say that skews more to the female action. Guys don't really get egotistical over their kids' behavior. They're like, oh, look at you. Because, you know, the worst thing you can think is, you know, the worst thing is to think of your child as an extension of yourself. They're a reflection on you and your family and your, you know, your parenting style on your household, but not a extension. You need to think of kids as impressionable, young people that need guidance and help. They're looking for help. You know, you can't judge them on an adult criteria level. You can't reason with them like adults. You shouldn't reason with them like adults, because it's not like you say to your 7-year-old, well, I'm glad we had this talk about your behavior tonight. Now make sure you get to bed on time. You have that board meeting tomorrow. They don't have adult responsibilities. It's not realistic or reasonable to treat them like adults and reason with like they can't be reasoned with as adults. They have the emotions of a child. They're children. It's appropriate.
They also don't have the prudence or the knowledge to be able to make complex decisions, and that's another key aspect I've noticed is a lot of parents tend to allow their kids to make very complicated decisions for themselves.
Well, that's a great point. The whole point of raising the kid with these, you know, is to first give them that structure of understanding the world, you know, of delaying gratification, because what they want to naturally do is not delay gratifications. What you're teaching them, that's why they act out. I want it now. Wah! Okay, well, I mean, I'm not saying you can't have it, but you got to wait. But since you cried, you got to wait even longer. Oh shit, it's really that easy.